Villains Land, everything we know so far. Which, again, monsters, epic, what is it? I always forget the name. Dark Universe. Villains Land versus Dark Universe. That's gonna be blasphemy. Alright, so this is what we're doing.
Hi there, Waltoneers. I'm Jack, and this is DSY Newscast. And today, I want to talk about Villains Land. That's been announced to be coming to the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World as
VillainCon. Let me take this off. Do you like the captions? You can hear them, right?
This was actually officially announced at D23 back in August, alongside a plethora of other
Plethora. One of my. I love that word.
That was
Plethora is a great word.
This one in particular stood out to me as being easily the most ambitious of all the Disney park projects and probably the most anticipated in terms of a fan base that have been wanting to see a Villains Land at.
These people were freaking out, bro. Those ears look fake.
For Disney parks for so long. And supposedly, everything that was announced at D23 should be complete within the next 5 years. At least that's what Disney told the members of the media in attendance at
5
D23.
years.
So hopefully by late 2029 at the very latest, we should be able to walk into this Villains Land or Villains Kingdom or whatever they're going to call it and experience it for ourselves. But
2029? Oh my god. I don't even know if I'm going to be alive then. How about you?
But today, I want to talk about everything we know so far about this Villains Land concept and begin
VillainCon! I just had to say it.
By talking about the official details, which, admittedly, they are relatively sparse at the time of recording, but it's still important to talk about what we officially know so far. Then I'm going to do a deep analysis of the actual artwork that's been released, and then in the main
4 more years. 4 more years.
How this Villains Land is going to work and how.
Oh, you see how packed they were? Look at this.
Talk about logistically.
Look how packed that is.
How this Villains Land is going to work and how it's going to fit within the Magic Kingdom. As after all, where it's located is going to decide an awful lot of what they can do within the space itself. And it's very important to understand the expectation of what we can see from this Villains Land. But where I want to begin is the official detail. On Disney Parks blog, when they announced this Villains Land, they said that it's going to have 2 major attractions within the land. It's going to have dining and shopping, which of course no Disney park land would ever be complete without, and it's all going to be on an incredibly twisted, grand scale. Now clearly Disney's aiming to go very big with this Villains Land concept and really throw everything they've got at.
I won't say that they throw everything they got. You thought Villains was going to be out next summer? They're going to build a whole themed land in 1 year. It took them 5 years to build Tron. And I know that was because in between virus. But it took them 5 years to build Tron. And that was something that was already pre-built in Japan. They already had the specs for it. And it still took them 5 years. Let's just repeat that. It also took them 5 years to do Epcot. And you see how that came out. But I have to say this. They really think that what's this two attraction land thing gonna stop? Like you can only fit 2 rides. You're only able to fit 2 rides in a whole land. Let's be clear though, Toy Story Land has 3 technically rides. One of them was already technically built though, but I digress. But that has 3 rides. So why are we only getting 2 rides? 2 attractions. Let me say attractions. 2 attractions. They're magic. They can do I would hope they could do things, but only putting 2 attractions in a whole land, I feel like that's low. I feel like you can get at least 3 attractions in a land if you're building it from scratch. Like this 2 and 2 is starting to irritate me. And not only is it does that, is like they're usually getting rid of stuff to add those. So it's not like you're really getting any more. You're still getting the same amount of rides. You're just making different rides. Like Animal Kingdom. You're getting rid of Dinosaur, but you're putting Indiana Jones there and using the same track. It's a new ride, but it's not a new ride. Look at Tiana. She could have got her new ride. She could have got her own ride. But no, they just replaced Splash Mountain. So you didn't do anything new. You're acting like it's new, but people are still flocking to it like it's new. It's still the same ride, technically. Don't get rid of stuff to add. Just add. That's it. Just add.
This Villains Land. Otherwise, they wouldn't have mentioned the twisted grand scale if they weren't aiming to go big in terms of the scale of this land. And I also know that Imagineering are very excited about the prospect of doing a Villains Land within a Disney park, as they've been wanting to do this for many years, and they've been floating the idea of using villains as a theme for a land within a Disney park many times in the past. And it's easy to see why. As not only is it a lucrative IP for
Gonna
Disney
take a while,
in
yes.
terms of the popularity with the fans, but also gives them a lot of creative freedom to pull from all these various stories to make a really fantastic land that's never been done before.
But will they?
This Villains Land that they're going to build isn't going to be scary and horror related, but it is going to be more spooky ambiance like we see within
Dark Universe,
Haunted Mansion and Tower of Terror. That's the kind of thing they're going to go for within this land itself. And that actually brings us to the artwork. Now, the artwork that was released is very much blue sky. Now, do take it with a big pinch of salt. And
when they say blue sky, they mean like it's blue sky is like it's like the preliminary area. They're like the guys that do all like the basic concept stuff. Basically, what they're saying is it's not going to look like this.
So don't read too much into it. It is there to be interpreted in many different ways, but it is, for atmospheric reasons, very important, as like we saw with Star Wars Land that was announced in 2015, that blue sky artwork, what we ended up seeing with Galaxy's Edge in 2019, it wasn't exactly what we saw in 2015 in the exact layout of the blue sky artwork, but it did have the same landscape theming and overall atmospheric theming of the original blue sky artwork. So that's what we're going to see with this Villains Land artwork. I've got a high definition version of this artwork we can really dive into. And within the artwork, we can clearly see,
you know, they could have did something really cool with Star Wars Galaxies. Kind of like the same aspect that you see Spider-Man at Avengers Campus in Disneyland, where they have the animatronic and he just flings. They could have had a drone. They could have had a bunch of drones in the shape of a ship in the background of Galaxies, because they have the sound for it. Make it look like it's lifting up and leaving and like going to a different area of the park, and then it lands somewhere. And then like 10 minutes later, it comes back and it lands. That could have been so cool. That would have been so cool if they did that. And it's so easy. It's so easy to do. You program those drones to do that they do that show, that drone show at Disney Springs. You could program drones to make it look like a ship, cover it up with a ship looking device, make it light, and then just boom, boom, and then land. And then like 20 minutes later, it comes back. You know, like little things like that really bring the atmosphere to like the land. You know what I mean? Much like the characters.
But Maleficent is featured very heavily within the land, with Maleficent's pet Raven, Diablo, seemingly in the foreground of the artwork. And then, obviously, Maleficent
How you know that's Diablo?
is seen in dragon form in the background of the artwork.
You messing somebody up back there.
Area.
She doing work.
Going to be Maleficent's ruined castle on top of Forbidden Mountain from Sleeping Beauty, which is most likely...
You gonna live on that castle? I don't think not. I'm not living on that thing.
Likely going to be the central icon within this Villains Land. Now, I know there was some speculation that Chernobog's Mountain could be used from Fantasia within Villains Land, but they're clearly moving in the direction of using Maleficent and this
that guy was a beast though,
as the central icon for this land instead. And tucked away within the Forest of Thorns, we've all seen this, but there appears to be an outdoor roller coaster track.
Looks like a roller coaster
along the track, which is obviously going to be one of the major attractions that they're working on in terms of concepts for this land. And then in the front center of the artwork, there appears to be another roller coaster track or some sort of ride track traversing underground. Now,
I didn't see that. I didn't see that.
The magnificent dragon roller coaster that we see in the background is just swooping and traversing around the whole land, or it could be a second roller coaster. But I doubt
not two roller coasters. No,
probably do two roller coasters.
It's one.
Land. It's going to probably be a different type of ride system for the second major attraction within this land. And then elsewhere within the artwork, at risk of reading too much into it, this area over here looks a little bit like it could be themed to Hades and the underworld. And then the area to the side of it is giving a more warmer glow, which to me is reminiscent of more of the Jafar kind of character within the artwork as well there. And then also within the artwork, there appears to be plenty of water features featured throughout, and that does align with what we've heard in terms of rumors that water is going to play a big role within the land as well, and feature heavily in terms of water features and lakes and things like that.
You mean like where Tom Sawyer Island is? Water? Sorry, Tom Sawyer fans.
And also in the foreground of the bottom left-hand corner, there seems to be kind of like the forest of thorns and those brambles, creating a kind of archway, which could be a entrance to this villain's land area. And so that's what we can see within the artwork itself. But then we come to what's pulling everything together in terms of a narrative for this villain's land to make sense. And we don't officially know what the narrative is, but reading between the lines here, the magic mirror from Snow White was used as a narrative device to introduce this land on stage at D23. It's a big announcement right at the end of the presentation. And then they've also announced that there's going to be a villains show that's coming to Hollywood Studios
yes.
2025.
I cannot wait for this. I know Jaden's upset, but no more cars. But this show, I have decent expectations for this show. I think it's going to be, I want to say it's going to be pretty cool. If they can, I want it to be a little bit more, I hope it's a little interactive with the crowd, right? I hope the evil characters are going to be like interacting a little bit with the crowd. You know what I mean? Not like an improv show, but a little bit of back and forth, or just like, talking junk or staring at them or something, some form. I hope so.
And within the artwork for that show, it's also got the magic mirror as a narrative device for that show as well. And also the fact that Magic Mirror was within the Instagram promotional video they released as well. I think there's a lot of smoke where there's fire here. Most likely Magic Mirror is going to be used in some way for this villain's land. So that will be interesting. Keep an eye out for that as well. And then the villains.
Something kind of cool that could work, depending on how they do it. Just like Monsters Laugh Floor, they could have a magic mirror with a real person talking back to people as they're walking by through the park or something. Like the mirror's just on a wall somewhere, or maybe in the line queue or something, and then you can end up talking to it. That'd be kind of cool. But again, I think they might use it more for like Mr. Potato Head in Toy Story Mania than an actual live person. I think an actual live person would be even better because they can just talk junk all day to somebody, It's like that. It's like that clown that you're trying to dunk at the fair. That type of vibe.
What villains are they going to have within the land? And I think a good understanding of this would probably be the villains show over in Hollywood Studios, as within that artwork we can see Maleficent, Captain Hook, Cruella de Vil, Scar, Hades, Jafar, Ursula and the Queen of Hearts, and even Yzma from Emperor's New Groove. Now, I'd probably also add to the list there, probably the Evil Queen will be featured as the original villain of all Disney villains, and probably Gaston will probably be there, and also Dr. Facilier. But
I need Dr. Facilier in my life, man. They totally snubbed him on Tiana's ride. I need Keith David somewhere. Give me Keith David somewhere.
That's not been mentioned. I would love to see Chernobog represented in some way in the attractions as well. I think that'd be great, but that's probably the list of villains that we'll see within here. But being a villain's land, it leaves a lot more room for them to do a lot more things within the land as well. Now, with all that being said, let's get to the logistics of this whole thing. As we all know that Rivers of America is going to be removed in 2025, and this is where Villains Land's going to go. The front half of Rivers of America is going to be used for this Cars section and this Cars attraction within Frontierland that's themed to the National Parks of America. And then the second half, which is the much larger section of Rivers of America, if they empty down to the basin and they, you know, clear out the outer perimeter of Rivers of America, you've got roughly 8.5 acres to work with there. But here's the important thing.
What's
If
important?
you look at the land suitability
You gonna
map
tell me?
that was released a few years ago by the Reedy Creek Improvement District, the land in the top right-hand corner that you can see within this satellite image is actually marked as marginally suitable and marginally unsuitable for construction. So
Why?
part of it they could use. And if they do end up extending into the backstage area behind the Haunted Mansion show building, then that gives them realistically around 11 acres to work with without going outside of the berm of the Magic Kingdom and interfering with the train track and all that sort of stuff. So it's possible that this land could be anywhere between 8.5 acres to 11 acres in size. Now, just to give you an understanding of the actual size 11 acres is, New Fantasyland and Storybook Circus was roughly around 10.5 acres. Pandora, the World of Avatar, is around 11 acres. And Toy Story Land itself is around 10.5 acres. So that's the kind of land we're aiming for here. And
That's crazy.
the total expansion size of Cars area within Frontierland and Villains would put the total expansion area for both of these lands at around 15 acres, which would actually be the largest expansion ever to the Magic Kingdom, vastly larger than New Fantasyland. So it's a big project they're working on here. Now, there was an alternative concept. I know a lot of people have said
That's a lot of land,
Rivers of
man.
America and build Villains outside of a berm.
Yeah.
The Magic Kingdom on the ground outside
I
the
wish.
train tracks. Now, there was a concept that was floated around.
Aha,
and
problem.
This would have been building it outside of the berm, and it would have been for a kind of a villains village. And it was a much smaller concept, according to insiders who have disclosed this on the WDW Magic forums. And apparently this was kind of a bizarro village concept that would have been all these villains coming together and kind of setting up camp, or a bizarro village on the outskirts of the Magic Kingdom. Not even sure if there were any major attractions planned as part of this concept, or if it was more dining, maybe a show and some shops as part of the concept. But it was a much smaller concept, and the reason for that is to build beyond the berm would cost Disney an awful lot more money to then grade all that land and get it all ready to be built upon outside of the berm of the Magic Kingdom. Then you've got the logistical issues of having to close down the train to do it as well, and all that sort of stuff. So it was a spiraling cost that made it kind of unattractive proposal there. And that's without even considering all of the issues they would have had with the South Florida Water Management District of going into more unused wetland area, which is what they're already having issues with. So don't even know if that was even a realistic idea to do, but they've gone for this idea of using Rivers of America and putting 4 attractions where there is essentially Tom Sawyer Island and the riverboat.
There's essentially no attractions. Because let's be honest, is it really an attraction? I mean, it funnels people out of certain areas, but the boat's probably something. But let's be honest, again, it has no shops, and that's what's really important to Disney, making money.
So they can use that space better within the Magic Kingdom.
Better.
But then coming back to this Rivers of America concept, it's important to understand where can they put show buildings for attractions and restaurants and stuff like that. And realistically, you've got to look at access roads and where's available backstage areas. And most likely, they will have to locate a attraction show building in the top right hand corner behind the back of the Haunted Mansion show building. And so you've got a access road there already, and that will be very useful getting in and out of the land for operations and stuff like that. So there's actually enough space in that corner to put the show building from Rise of Resistance, which is a 100,000 square foot show building, very large show building, in that space, and even put the restaurant the size of 25,000 square feet, which is actually the size of the Be Our Guest restaurant, which is what you can see here, in that space as well.
And then the coaster's back that way.
Would have to be accessible from backstage. So I think in that top corner, that's where we'll see hopefully a big indoor attraction show building for the villains, and most likely a dining, sit down restaurant within the land as well. And then the rest of the body of the area where villains will be, you'll see kind of a village area probably, and you can have shops and retail locations and quick service, dining within the central part of the land, as that stuff can get restocked in the morning before the park opens or late at night. All of that sort of stuff can be handled quite easily without having to have that direct backstage access. Now, I mention that because the outer perimeters where it would touch the railroad track, you can't put a show building there because it would back onto the railroad track, and then you've got a whole issue there. So I reckon there's going to be some sort of creative theming that goes around the outskirts of there, and it will be, themed rock work or tree lines and stuff like that, but that maybe the brambles from the Forest of Thorns around the outskirts of there, and it'll kind of add that backdrop to the entire land. And then in terms of the construction logistics here, it actually makes it very easy once they've drained the rivers of America to get construction vehicles in and out and construction equipment in and out of the area to actually build this land without having to necessarily shut down the railroad track for many years like we saw with Tron, as they've already got a bridge there which lifts up and is a lifting drawbridge that's used for the train for when they needed to move a riverboat out of Rivers of America and backstage into the maintenance dock. So because they've already got that there, they can then use that to, bring construction.
That's scary. I don't want to ride that railroad anymore.
After all, just outside of a berm,
I don't want to ride it anymore.
They're going to be having a gravel laydown yard just outside, and that's where they're going to have to stabilize the land and use that for construction staging, so therefore they can build within inside the berm. So it all kind of adds up how they're going to do this whole thing. But also the fact that they've got that bridge there means that once the land's complete, they could possibly extend the villains' land outside of a berm quite easily if they wanted to, and kind of use that gravel
walkway
area if it's stable land
under the
to then kind of
train.
Put some roller coaster supports in place and have maybe the Forest of Thorns outside of the track of the Magic Kingdom, so therefore you can kind of do this big attraction without it needing to go overhead of the rest of the land, but you've got all the extra space inside then of the 8.5 acres to 11 acres for shops and dining and all that sort of stuff within the space there.
But where's the coaster?
There's a lot of possibilities, and then that would mean that you could use, much like they did with Splash Mountain and Tiana's, you can go underneath the train track to get to the queue space and the entrance for that Maleficent attraction instead. Just speculation on my part. Other things to mention here, I reckon there's going to be roughly around 1 acre of buffer space between the Frontierland section and this Villains Land area to add a kind of theming transition, otherwise it'll be very jarring between the two.
Yeah.
And so I think there'll be around 1 acre of that used up as kind of a transition.
I think maybe putting like a portal or something would be cool, but can't really do a portal because it's too close to everything else and you're going to see the castle and the villain stuff from outside. So a portal doesn't technically work. But then again, Universal's doing it. So again, I have to actually go there and see how the portal works. But it might be different when you're at the bottom view
area. And there's most likely going to be some sort of tree line or tree berm that will probably surround the backside of Big Thunder Mountain as an attraction there, because you don't want Big Thunder also being seen from within Villains Land. Maybe the top of Big Thunder.
I will say that's going to be an issue because kind of like the good thing about Big Thunder Mountain and kind of Haunted Mansion was the atmosphere viewing area when you're on the coaster of Big Thunder Mountain and you're seeing the water or you see the boat. Now it's just going to be like blocked by trees, and it doesn't really give like a cool like feel or aesthetic. So it's not going to look as cool.
The mountain could be seen, but like you want to kind of obscure and hide that behind some sort of tree line. So that's where we'll probably see a tree line there. And although you'll be able to probably access Villains Land from both Big Thunder Mountain side and also Haunted Mansion, I think there'll be a central access point, entrance and exit to Villains Land, to try and have that controlled themed transition. Otherwise it's going to be very jarring. So that's what I think we're looking at here. Also, the other thing I'd like to mention is within the central part of Villains Land, I reckon there'll be some sort of Bibbity Bobbity Boutique-esque location where you'll get a kind of villainous makeover within the land.
That'd be cool.
Similar to what Epic Universe have actually announced is going to be within their Dark Universe section of Epic Universe. So it
looks so much cooler
for that part. And then the last thing I want to talk about is sightlines. Now, when you are stood within Liberty Square and Frontierland, it'll be very easy to see into Villains Land if they don't build up around that area. So I reckon the reason why they've chosen this whole national park, you know, Piston Peak aspect
is to block the view.
Front section of Frontierland is to kind of hide the rest of Villains Land in the back.
Makes sense.
Be using the Piston Peak mountain range to try and hide the sight line of being able to see the Forbidden Mountain and the ruined castle, as then it would create a grander reveal moment if that's what they're trying to do there.
Right, that makes sense.
Being quite clever in terms of imagining trying to hide certain sight lines from within Frontierland with the national park theme in the front, and then you got Villains Land at the back. Now,
why'd I just notice that?
What would I like to see within Villains Land? I would love to see a Dragon Roller Coaster, outdoor Dragon Roller Coaster themed to Maleficent. I think that'd be fantastic, as we can see in the artwork. I would also like to see a big indoor grand boat ride idea, a bit like the e-ticket attraction over in Shanghai Pirates.
Why a boat ride?
Themed to all the villains. So we're kind of going on the river Styx or something like that as the
that would be cool.
Point to try and, you know,
that would be cool. I will say that.
Encounter all the villains along the way in animatronic form. I think that'd be fantastic, and use all sorts of maybe, you know, mist effects and fire effects and all this sort of stuff within the attraction as well. I personally would think that a Haunted Mansion restaurant, considering they've now committed to building 2 Haunted Mansion parlor bars on board the Disney Cruise Line, I think that could be a trial balloon for what we could see within Villains Land, and hopefully a Haunted Mansion restaurant. I think that'd be fantastic.
That would be cool.
Off that whole lore within the land as well. And then I would want to see a creepy kind of like lake area within Villains Land.
Smoky.
Mist, constantly rolling across the lake to kind of add to that kind of eerie ambiance. As after all, it's gonna be 100-degree weather, and it's going to be blaringly hot sun, and it's not going to feel that spooky during the daytime. So I'm hoping they can do that kind of thing to add that kind of element to. You
could still do it. It could still be creepy.
Always look like it does in the artwork with sunset with that kind of darker sky there. So that's what I'd like to see in terms of a Villains Land. But that's just me. So now it's over to you, the Wongtoniers.
I kind of like it.
Your thoughts and opinions on this Villains Land concept at the Magic Kingdom? What would you like to see within Villains Land in terms of a 2?
I hope to see something good. I hope to see something good. That's all I'm gonna say. I need it to work. I just need them to do it right. And I know it's easy for me to say on my end. I just wish they do it right, but I mean, they're Disney. That's what they get paid to do, right? They get paid to do it right. And if they don't do it right, then we're gonna tell them. Let them know. You know? I mean, they're already getting Tough to Be Dark Universe. Yes, it is. With the Wolfman. Yeah, it's just the burning windmill. Yes. I think it's gonna be cool because it's gonna be new, right? But I don't know if it's gonna be Dark Universe. I really don't. I just really don't. I hope it's on par at least, but what do you? I try to be optimistic. I try to make sure that I try to give criticism, constructive criticism, you know, and even though something is not cool or I don't like it or whatever, like I try to at least try to be optimistic about things. I try to look at the brighter side. You know, I can complain or I can be like, well, at least I'm at Disney. But digress all day. So, yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do, guys? You know, you can't. You know, there's not much you can.